Hey guys, Fletch here, bringing you another Fletch Talks video, and this video is concerning 5 things that I believe need changing within Premier League football. This past season has easily been one of the most unpredictable and difficult and controversial seasons, I think, of all time. And from what I've noticed, there has been a hell of a lot of problems with certain rules, certain regulations, and just overall things in general that are being put under the microscope constantly every week as being bad for the game. And I think it's time that those kind of things needed to be improved, and we need to move with the times, so to speak. And with that being said, this is why I decided to put this list together. Before I go on with the video though, I will say, if you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel, greatly appreciated. Also drop a like on the video, that would also be greatly appreciated. Both those things will always and forever be greatly appreciated. But for now, let's get back into this list of 5 things that I believe need changing within Premier League football. Number 5, linesmen need to be gone. My simple question here is, what exactly are the point of having linesmen in the game anymore? The introduction of VAR into the game seems to have made this refereeing role more irrelevant than ever now. Of course, VAR within the game now means that offsides for goals are now more clearer, shall we say. Controversial still, but slightly more clearer, and, you know, you're not getting blatantly obvious ones wrong, which, to be fair to linesmen, they were still getting it wrong before VAR's introduction into the game, somehow missing sometimes even the most simpler of offside calls. And don't worry, we will be getting into the offside law later in this video, so a bit of a spoiler alert there for you. So with this factor in play, again, I have to ask, what is the point of having linesmen in the game? Furthermore, the ruling of the linesmen seems to state that the linesmen are set to leave their flag down until the passage of play has ended. Again, I have to ask, what is the point of that? Not only is this a possibly dangerous situation, depending on the scenario in play, but most of the time these linesmen can't even spot the most simple of offside calls, no matter how offside a player is. And even then, some still call offsides wrong when they're actually onside. And following the linesman raising his flag, 9 times out of 10, the defending team is now springing a counter-attack. But of course, when the linesman does raise his flag, for whatever reason, the play has got to be brought all the way back for a free kick to that same team that are on the attack and then have the advantage. For the third time anyway, in this segment, what is the point? Please tell me, what is the point of having linesmen in the game anymore? They can't spot the simplest of calls. VAR is in the game to basically do their job, and they bring back the play for a team that is going on to do a counter-attack anyway. So what is the point? Please tell me I'm not the only one that is thinking this. And it definitely needs changing going forward. Number 4, stop the clock. Now, when I say this, there are a couple of incidents in mind to back up why I believe stopping the clock would be a good idea. The first incident occurred a few weeks ago between Liverpool and Manchester United in the Premier League, where the referee called time to the end of the first half with 5 seconds to go, when the minimal amount of extra time that was set to be added on, which was 2 minutes on that day, didn't happen. Instead, he called time to the end of the first half with 5 seconds remaining, despite the fact that it looked like Liverpool were going to be through on goal. Another incident happened this past week alone when Arsenal played Wolves. There was 2 minutes again of added on time set to be played, and the game, or the half should I say, went over or exceeded that 2-minute mark. And during that 3rd minute of play, Arsenal conceded a penalty. It was quite controversial. That incident in itself, the David Luiz incident, was quite controversial. It was seen as something that was very debatable as to whether it was a penalty or not, or whether it was a red card. And again, both sets of fan bases, the Liverpool fan base and the Arsenal fan base, were not happy with the referee, despite two different outcomes happening. One being that the game got called off early, and the second being that the game got called off too late. These are, of course, just two examples of probably many that you can go back to and you can probably look at and say, where did the referee get this added on time from? Where did he get this added on time from? And I'm sure that there are plenty of examples, like I say, not just this season, but in previous seasons and campaigns as well. It's an issue that I've personally found has become more and more of an issue over recent seasons, and it mostly stems from not understanding sometimes where referees get these added on minutes from. And so my answer to this, to combat this issue, to basically make things clearer and state where you get this added on time from, is that when the ball goes out of play, you stop the clock. I think many other sports do it. I think it's a lot in many other American sports, particularly like your basketball, your American footballs. But even over here, like with your rugby, they kind of do that over here, where wherever the ball has gone out of play, wherever there's goals, substitutions, fouls, corners, throw-ins, offsides, etc., when the ball goes out of play, the clock stops and only resumes when the ball is back in play and back in the field and back into there. And therefore, everyone gets the full 90 minutes. There's no need for confusion. There's no more controversy surrounding the amount of time left to be played or not. And everybody is therefore knowing of the amount of play that's set to be played still. Is it just too simple, or is that too obvious, or is that just me? Because I feel like this needs to happen as soon as possible to stop things like this from happening. Because referees, they just do what they want, as I'll go on to later in this video. Number 3, the handball rule. This is definitely a rule that has become more and more under the microscope this season alone, and arguably much more than in previous years gone by. What counts as a handball anymore? Because I don't know. I can hazard a guess and say that many of you don't know, because it seems that many pundits and fans alike that watch games constantly every week, they don't seem to know either. A lot of people don't seem to know what counts as a handball every week, because this is a very grey area type of rule. It's not very well cleared out. There are a lot of factors to put into this kind of rule that needs to be taken into account, and which is why the kind of wording of the rule, the kind of explanation of the rule has left it such a massive grey area that one week a handball will be given for something that's quite controversial, the next week something that's blatantly obvious won't be given, but then the next week that same thing will probably be given. So to me, this is a rule that needs to be sorted out as soon as possible, because there are a lot of things to determine as to whether it is handball or not. Is it intentional? Is it not intentional? Where's the cut-off point of the arm? It seems that every season these questions to go along with this rule make it more controversial. Some, of course, are more easy to spot and determine than others, of course, but it's such a massive grey area, like I say. We're going to have to review the law, take into account the factors such as the speed of the ball, the player's positioning, whether they are facing the play or not, the distance that the ball has travelled, the movement of the player that's seen as the guilty party here. And then we have to rewrite the law accordingly and make sure that the referees implement this law when it is, to make it a clearer stance on this issue, and to make sure that, of course, mistakes are going to happen, but mistakes are reduced in that respect. It will never be completely one way or the other as to determining whether someone is guilty of handball or not. But the very least we can do is make the handball rule clearer, and as a result reduce the mistakes that are being made each and every single week when it comes to this harsh ruling. Number 2, the offside law. Another law that needs to be changed and needs to be reviewed ASAP. I am of course talking about the offside law, because this law is now becoming a serious joke each and every week. I've had my issues with this law for ages. I personally think that this is an extremely harsh law that is chalking off some very good goals by the smallest of margins. Look, I understand that there needs to be a cut-off point somewhere. I understand that there needs to be offside and not offside, and there's a very fine margin for that cut-off point as to what makes one offside, what makes one onside. But is there really much of an advantage to the attacking team when one of their players has a fingernail or a toe or even a nose offside? The answer is no, because you look at when they draw the lines and they're very fine, they're very small lines, and they're basically looking at every single body part to determine whether a guy is onside or onside. And they're drawing it from it seems to be weird angles, the lines don't seem to be straight, the body parts don't seem to match up, or whatever the controversy may be. It just seems like they're trying to pick the very minor faults in these types of goals. And you know, this season alone, we've seen some of the strangest and most harshest of offside calls in some big games. I instantly think back to Sadio Mane's goal, for example, Jordan Henderson's goal, in which Sadio Mane was judged to be offside in the Merseyside derby between Liverpool and Everton, as one example. Or the Patrick Bamford incident when Leeds faced Crystal Palace earlier this season. You know, those incidents instantly spring to mind when I talk about this subject. And of course, there are going to be other incidents that I haven't talked about that have happened, not just this season, but in previous seasons gone by. And I think it's time that we really reviewed the law and really made it so that offsides only occur for when a team has got a major unfair advantage over the defending team. There are, of course, other elements to this rule, such as the standard of refereeing. I talked about this a little bit earlier in this video, as the usage by referees of VAR. But I feel like if they can adjust the rule accordingly and make it so that smaller margins of offside will actually not be offside, and you know, use that going forward, then maybe it might clear up some of the constant controversy that is surrounding this rule and, you know, pretty much occurring every single week in the Premier League, because it's extremely harsh that a lot of football fans are baffled over as to how the officials arrive at such a harsh decision. And in its own way, it's definitely ruining the game, in my opinion. And number 1, no prizes for guessing this, because it's been a constant theme throughout this entire video: the standard of referees. Okay, where to begin on this one? It's of my personal opinion that the standard of Premier League refereeing is at its current worst state ever. And that is really saying something, because the standard of refereeing in the Premier League has been pretty poor for a while now. And that's even with the introduction of VAR, designed to help referees, but ultimately is highlighting just how bad they actually are. I'm planning on releasing a video on this in which I go into more detail in the near future over this current refereeing situation. But within the past week alone, there have been a number of controversial decisions which have led to penalties and red cards, especially, that have been awarded, to the bafflement and confusion of many pundits and supporters alike. The David Luiz red card, which I touched on earlier, being one of them. Another one was the Jan Bednarak red card for Southampton against Manchester United earlier this week. That actually, despite going to VAR, got overturned and rescinded a couple of days later. So that again is another highlight of referees getting it wrong despite having the luxury of rewatching a certain incident and having VAR to help them. Another incident, of course, over this past weekend occurred in the West Ham Fulham game, in which Thomas Souček got red carded for an elbow, which looked accidental, controversial again. But these are just 3 controversial decisions that happened over the past week alone. And if you look back over the current campaign especially, there are plenty of more and a number of controversial incidents that have occurred with the majority of things that I've talked about in this video. Handball, offside, red cards, penalties, and so on. They've all occurred, they've all been controversial, and I think it's getting worse by the game. There are a number of reasons and issues with the current state of referees and why they are a problem within the current game, and it definitely does go a little bit deeper than, well, I personally believe it goes a little bit deeper than just what you see in their displays on the pitch. But I think that many will agree that this is one of the top priorities that need to be changed as soon as possible, because it's only continuing to get worse in my opinion. And despite the fact that VAR has been introduced to help referees come to a more correct decision, it's difficult to defend these refs most of the time, and I believe it's time for a change with this element of the game. But of course, these are just the thoughts, comments, and opinions of this guy. I want to know what you guys think. What do you make of this list? What do you make of the things that I've talked about? Is there anything on this list that I haven't talked about that should be also considered into changing the game? I'm sure, leave your thoughts, your comments, your opinions down in the comment section below. I'm sure they'll all make for interesting reading. Otherwise, hit that like button on the way out if you enjoyed the video. Subscribe if you're new or want to see more content like this. Both things will be greatly appreciated. And as always, thank you all so much for watching and listening. I've been Fletch. This has been another Fletch Talks video, and I will soon speak with you all again soon in another video.